There's this narrative in the media, a caricature, if you will, that if you're on the right, you hate immigrants. You don't like people that are coming to your country because they're changing the ethnic makeup of your nation or the religious makeup or something like that. But in reality, nothing could be further from the truth, at least for me. I love the idea that we live in a country that is so great and provides so much opportunity that people from around the world want to come here. My issue is, first and foremost, that an immigration policy in any nation should be tailored based on the preferences and to benefit the native-born population. Our government should serve us. It is by the people and for the people, and that means the people that are here, that are citizens, that are contributing to this nation, and not cater to any foreign population. But it appears that our immigration policy in this great nation is completely backwards. If you come across the border illegally, if you abuse our asylum system for some reason, you not only get the same rights and protections afforded to citizens under the Constitution, but you appear to get extra rights and this sense of entitlement that we've never seen throughout our history with any immigrant group. Everybody has a story of their grandfather, their great-grandfather coming to this country with $14 in their pockets, landing at Ellis Island, going to a crappy neighborhood in New York City, and being forced to make it on their own. And under that old system of immigration in the United States of America, a lot of people who couldn't hack it actually went back to their origin country. Now, fast forward to today, 2023, and we have stories of cities like New York City building out shelters for people who are seeking asylum because they're supposedly in dire straits in their home country, and those people refusing to go into the shelters because they're not as nice as the Midtown hotels that they were previously staying in on the taxpayers' dime. It's ridiculous, it's absurd, but it just happened, and we gotta talk about it. But before we do, I want to say thank you to today's sponsor, so let me toss it to the ad read, then we'll come back over here and discuss it on the other side. The U.S. national debt spike could mean a long-term boom for gold. Since March of 2020, the federal government has added $8 trillion, that's trillion with the T, to the national debt, and now interest payments on that debt supersede $1 trillion. On top of that, we have international organizations like BRICS and oil-rich nations meeting and having discussions about potentially moving away from the petrodollar. This could spell an absolute disaster and economic hardship for Americans for years to come. This is one of the reasons why I'm so happy to be partnering with National Gold Group. You can help secure your investments by backing up your retirement with precious metals. Buying gold and silver is a strategic hedge against potential future disaster, and especially when we're in a nation where 51% of Americans can't pay their credit cards, and the Build Back Better spending agenda is supposed to raise the national debt all the way through the year of 2024. Do yourself a favor and call National Gold Group at 866-826-2603 so that you can talk over your options. Make sure you mention the channel Actual Justice Warrior so that they know that I sent you. Again, that number is 866-826-2603. Call them and learn about protecting your investments today. There is always a risk with any investments, and prior performance is not a guarantee of future results.
Opening of the new migrant shelter at Floyd Bennett Field in Brooklyn did not go as smoothly as some officials had hoped.
Several migrant families that were bused to the facility refused to stay there. They got right back on the bus.
Sometimes you hear an intro to a story, sometimes you see a headline above an article, and you think, there's no way this can be true. This has to be exaggerated. This is patently absurd. This is ridiculous in every possible way. But I assure you, what was just described by my Fox, a local affiliate over here in New York City, absolutely did happen. There is video of it, and it defies almost all logic until you realize that these migrants have been treated with kid gloves, and now they have developed a very American sense of entitlement, so they're refusing to go into the shelters that the state of New York spent $20 million building because they're not as nice as the previous luxury hotel accommodations that they were once in.
Yeah, it is possible, Rosanna and Dan. Clearly, the situation is not ideal here. It's a transit desert. It is far from everything. It's not close to where parents have to take their kids to school. The bathrooms, the showers are outside. A long list of concerns. I could go on and on. But
now, of course, we're at the midpoint of this story, and if we get a little bit of a flashback, I can explain how things got to where they got. Essentially, here's what's been happening in our nation. Border states like Texas, Arizona, and everywhere online with the Mexican border have been dealing with surges of migrants at the border from time to time for years. The federal government, both Democrats and Republicans, but distinctly more the Democratic Party, have basically said that those states can just deal with it. It's their problem. They're not going to enforce the border. And then Texas Governor Greg Abbott, among other governors, got sick and tired of it and decided to start shipping migrants to places like New York City that said that they were sanctuary cities that were welcoming to migrants, and then the chaos ended up beginning. Now, while everything I just told you is 100% true, what you need to understand is that in reality, in actuality, the people who are coming to New York City are largely not connected in any way, shape, or form to Greg Abbott's political stunt of shipping migrants to these left-wing cities so they can feel the weight of what they're voting for on a national level. For the most part, immigrants, when they get to the southern border, actually request to go to New York City. They actually request to go to Chicago, and this is due in large part to laws that were passed in those respective cities that provide benefits and all sorts of perks to these illegal migrants just for showing up. Now, we'll start with Chicago, since this story is largely focused on New York City, but essentially, during the Lori Lightfoot administration, as a way to own the evil orange man, they passed a law to say that they love immigrants so much that they're no longer going to be testing or checking for citizenship when they hand out public benefits. At the same time, in the city of New York, we have what is called a right to shelter. So migrants know when they come to the border that if they end up in New York or Chicago, they are entitled to public benefits and rewards that they would not be entitled to in other places. This is why the overwhelming majority of migrants that find their way to New York City are not being shipped here due to a sinister plot from Greg Abbott. They're actually being sent here by their own request because they want those perks. So already baked into the cake of these migrants, we have an entitled population that is seeking not a better work life, but in fact seeking better public benefits. Now, of course, all of these people flooded New York City's shelter system, and it was overwhelmed almost immediately. So what the Adams administration had to do, because this right to shelter does in fact exist, was start buying out hotel rooms in luxury hotels in New York City for these people to stay.
And I'm Joe Torres. First, that breaking news. A large crowd of asylum seekers protesting in Midtown Manhattan tonight.
This is happening outside the Watson Hotel on 57th Street. They say they've been locked out of that hotel where they have been housed, and they're being forced to move to the Brooklyn Marine Terminal.
Now, this was a disaster on multiple different levels. First and foremost, because these hotels knew for a fact that New York City had to shelter them, they were charging them a premium rate, not even a bulk rate, for all of the rooms. If you had a wedding party and you were going to stay in this hotel, there were incidents where you were actually thrown out of your wedding block in order to make room for these migrants. And to make matters worse, they started trashing the hotels. They started creating fire hazards by bringing in hot plates because it's not good enough for them to be in these luxury hotels and have everything covered. They also wanted to cook in those hotels, thus creating a bunch of different problems and a total disaster that had to be picked up by the New York City taxpayer. Now, to give credit to Eric Adams, he is not Mayor Bill de Blasio, who signed that extra own the orange man, we love immigrants law. He's the one dealing with it, and he's been pretty honest about the fact that they're going to have to cut all of these different services in the city of New York by about 5% in order to offset the cost.
Never in my life have I had a problem that I did not see an ending to. I don't see an ending to this. I don't see an ending to this. This issue will destroy New York City. Destroy New York City. We're getting 10,000 migrants a month. One time we were just getting Venezuela. Now we're getting Ecuador. Now we're getting Russian-speaking coming through Mexico. Now we're getting Western Africa. Now we're getting people from all over the globe have made their minds up that they're going to come through the southern part of the border and come into New York City. And everyone is saying it's New York City's problem. Every community in this city is going to be impacted. We got a $12 billion deficit that we're going to have to cut Every service in this city is going to be impacted.
Now, obviously, this is completely unsustainable. If in an entire year, you're cutting 5% out of every single public service in order to compensate for what should be a problem that is regulated by the federal government, that is something that you cannot continue doing. But when it was clear that there was no help coming from the Biden administration, they decided that they were going to move the migrants out of the hotels to temporary shelters.
Desperation and fear spilled out onto West 57th Street tonight outside the Watson Hotel.
It's hypocritical to think that immigration is only for privileged countries and not for everyone.
These migrants housed here since they were bused in New York City are getting on the bus again. This time we're told they're being transferred to the Brooklyn Cruise Terminal in Red Hook, where cots have been set up, except they don't want to go. Pedro Duran, originally from Venezuela, arrived in New York in mid-October. He was already bused to Brooklyn, but said it was so cold he came back to the Watson, except he is no longer welcomed here.
However, the entitlement mindset had already set in. These people actually protested quite famously outside of the Watson Hotel, which, by the way, is located on 57th Street, which is right near Central Park, by the way, actually in the area where I went to school, a very nice neighborhood that I could never afford to live in. And the migrants decided that they were going to protest their removal from their hotel because they have been conditioned to believe that being an illegal immigrant to the United States of America gives you a divine right to stay at some of the most premium hotels in one of the wealthiest cities in this country. So we had a near riot, plus we had people who are immigration advocates that were standing in and around the area boosting up these people as they got off the buses and ordered other people off buses while blocking new people who were willing to leave from getting on those very same buses.
It's not humane. This is not the way you treat human beings. They want to go back into their rooms at the Watson Hotel. This is what they think of as their home right now. This is their home right now.
Now, by the way, if you are curious, I actually ended up looking up what is the cheapest per night rate that you can get at this hotel. This is the weekday rate, and it's about $255 a night. And considering the Watson Hotel housed a bunch of single men, that is a lot of money to be spending per migrant in these hotels, so it makes sense for the city of New York to seek alternative accommodations. However, this entitled population was absolutely not having it. Some of them even got to the point where they were camping outside the hotel on the sidewalk demanding to be let back in. And by the way, I actually looked it up on Google, and for whatever reason, I'm not sure what this actually means. It appears that the Watson Hotel is closed as of right now. Now, maybe this is due to the fact that reportedly these migrants were trashing it. Maybe it's closed for booking to the general public because there's migrants that are still there. I have not found the reason for this information, but you have a beautiful hotel on 57th Street right near Central Park that is closed down that was being used to house migrants, just to show you how much damage these people actually cause. And of course, that created a sense of entitlement to the point where as of 8 or 9 months ago, these people were refusing to move into shelters back then. Now, fast forward to today, they build this shelter on this federal space in Brooklyn. They set it up. It's not the most luxurious accommodations, but if you think about the dire straits that these people who are pretending to be asylum seekers say that they were in, it should be good enough, yet they're refusing to go into the shelters. Let's go back to that local news segment so you could see this absurdity for yourself.
At Floyd Bennett Fields, what's going on? How is this possible?
Yeah, it is possible, Rosanna and Dan. Clearly, the situation is not ideal here. It's a transit desert. It is far from everything. It's not close to where parents have to take their kids to school. The bathrooms, the showers are outside. A long list of concerns. I could go on and on.
Now, look, sometimes I come down on local news for their use of language and whatnot, but the pure shock that is being communicated between the host in the studio and the reporter on the ground is really indicative of the absurdity that is the city of New York. The fact of the matter is, people think this is not possible. People think that these migrants would be grateful for this temporary shelter while they process their applications, while they try to fast track their work permits, but apparently it's not good enough It is never enough. They demand more, and all of their complaints sound pretty reasonable, except for the fact that you realize that they're getting something 100% for free, and this is a scenario where supposed beggars are definitely being choosers.
Less than an hour after the first batch of migrants arrived at Brooklyn's Floyd Bennett Field, families boarded the bus that took them there and went back to the Roosevelt Hotel Intake Center. City Council member Joanna Ariola, who represents neighborhoods in Queens, posted on the social media platform X that migrants refused to stay for various reasons, such as location, conditions, and the proximity of the schools where their children are registered.
So yeah, you just heard that right there. These people got off the bus, they looked at the facilities, and within an hour, they were demanding to be taken back to the Roosevelt Hotel, another hotel in the city of New York, because they didn't like the conditions, they didn't like how close it was to the schools that their kids are being enrolled in, by the way, on the taxpayer dime as well, and they think it's not good enough for them. The city of New York needs to do better because they are the superior citizens of the city of New York in that they're not actually citizens, and now we have members of our state legislature, members of our city council going to bat for the migrants, for the people that they're not supposed to be representing, rather than the average everyday citizen. You are to perpetually put up the bill for these people in whatever nice hotel that they want to be in, and if you have any alternative, unless that is of 5-star quality, then that will not be accepted because these migrants have God-tier rights. We can't accommodate them with busing or anything like that if their schools are too far from the migrant facility. We gotta just relocate them completely, scrap the $20 million that we put in over here, because it's just not good enough for the migrants. Do better, New York City. The migrants demand more.
State Assembly member Jamie Williams was on site and echoed those concerns.
It's a very isolated area. When you came in, you have to come all around. So it's not a place where you put women and children.
So I think it's important for people to actually see what these facilities look like, but understand this obviously isn't the most ideal scenario. The bathrooms are located outside, but the thing is, you are coming to this country because supposedly you need asylum. Supposedly you're facing political persecution, fear of death, and all of that. But apparently it is not ideal to have these people located in their family cut off cubicles and have to walk outside in order to use the toilet in the middle of the night, because you have a divine right to a heated seat as located in a 5-star hotel in New York, according to the 57th Amendment of the United States Constitution, apparently. Now, I know somewhere in the comments of this video, I'm going to get people saying, oh, well, if those conditions are so good, why don't you live there, Sean? Why don't you move out of your apartment and go live there, you absolute scumbag? Why do you think it's good enough for the migrants and not good enough for you? And to be clear, I have not said that this is ideal circumstances. Now, also to be clear, many poor Americans in rural parts of this country live in worse circumstances. I've seen your bathrooms on the internet.com. They're not very nice at all. But again, these are people who are supposedly in dire third world straits that are of fear of death from their government, seeking asylum in the United States of America. And compared to that, these conditions shouldn't be that bad. On top of that, these are temporary shelters before we end up finding a more permanent place for them to live, or before they're eligible for the work permits so that they can get a job and provide for themselves. And me, as somebody who is providing for myself, gets a little bit more selection, in my opinion, than people who are abusing the asylum system and taking from the taxpayer.
And then the facilities is just not, friendly, especially in the middle of the night if a child or an adult have to get up to go outside of the tent to use that bathroom.
Floyd Bennett Field was first proposed as a shelter site months ago. The former airfield space is owned by the federal government, but Governor Hochul is footing the $20 million bill. The makeshift shelter has enough room to house 2,000 people, but the proposal was immediately met with intense pushback due to its inconvenient location, lack of mass transit, susceptibility to flooding, and more. Fox 5 toured the site last month. There are 4 dormitories, a tent for registration and for people to connect with caseworkers. Another tent will be used as a cafeteria, but communal bathrooms and showers are set up outside.
The problem that we have here is that we gave these people a taste of luxury, and now they feel like they're entitled to it. And to be clear, I've stayed in nice hotels in my time, in my life. It's happened before, but I always did so at a discounted price for a special occasion, and I never thought that I was entitled to live in the glorious top-rated facilities in a major metropolitan area on somebody else's dime. That's how these people are feeling, and that's why I'm calling it out. They have what they need. It is not ideal. You can make arrangements for transportation that's much cheaper than hoteling them in central Manhattan, but for them, that's not enough. For them to look at that, spit in the face of the New York taxpayer, to which I am one, and say that I want to go back to the hotel, to me is an absurdity that we cannot deal with. How about we get you in that ticketing office and we fly you back to your home country if you think this isn't good enough for a temporary period of time until you can get your work permit and actually fend for yourself in the United States of America.
This is not, best conditions, but we're managing crises. And can I say any better that we need help?
Meanwhile, Mayor Adams toured the site last night, doubling down on his calls for more federal assistance.
So there you have Eric Adams saying, look, they're not the most ideal conditions, but we're making the best of this situation and we need help. Then they cut, by the way, to a his and her sink in front of one of these bathrooms that are, God forbid, you have to walk outside in order to get to. And I can't help but imagine that there are people in my audience right now that have a bathroom that is nowhere near as nice as this one, that doesn't have that nice of a backsplash, that is in poorer condition. And the reason why I know this is because recently a 20-year-old bathroom that was in my apartment was finally fixed by my landlord, and the difference is night and day. And I say that as somebody who is paying a New York City rent, who's paying through the nose for the bathroom that I had before that had all sorts of problems, that was only fixed, by the way, because my landlord discovered it was an origin point of a leak that was affecting another unit in the building. That's the reason why they never altered this bathroom from the day that this building was built to when I lived in it, all that period of time until just recently. But these people with their new facilities, their new cafeteria, everything being provided for them, power outlets, it being sectioned off so that families can live amongst themselves, no, not good enough for them.
The city has set up more than 200 emergency shelters since the crisis began, and 2 large-scale relief centers, one outside the Creedmoor Psychiatric Center in Queens and another on Randall's Island.
The big problem is this situation that New York City is in. And so, again, a site like this is needed because we don't have anywhere else. If we had some other places, I'd love for people to let us know where they are.
And that's the other aspect to this story that is not being emphasized and contrasted to the entitlement from these migrants who refuse to go into these shelters. New York has already exhausted all of its ordinary shelters. They set up over 200 temporary prop-up shelters, which obviously don't have the ideal conditions, and these are the new ones that are being built considering the load of people who have come into this country illegally and have decided to make New York their destination. Now, I have said before, and I'll say it again, you have to get rid of the magnets that are attracting people if you want people to not come, and that includes getting rid of the right to shelter in New York City so that these migrants stop choosing this as their first option. But the fact of the matter is, they're not only choosing America as their first option, skipping over 6 or 7 countries in between Venezuela, where a lot of these people come from, and the United States of America, but then they're choosing New York City, but then within New York City, they're demanding to be in luxury hotels in Midtown Manhattan. And I got news for you guys. I probably, even as well as I'm doing on this channel, will never ever be able to live in Midtown Manhattan where these people were being hoteled and having little mini riots based on the fact that they were being shifted to shelters.
The Legal Aid Society toured this site a few weeks ago and wrote a long list of concerns to the city about why it is not suitable for families with children. Representatives were back here again yesterday. They are doubling down on their calls for the city to pull out of this plan, but the question remains, with people already moving in, is that even possible at this point?
You know, something needs to be done about the migrant industrial complex. Now, I know for a fact that a bunch of these people were against this because they're against anything except absolute luxury for these illegal migrants. But the idea that we're going to sink $20 million into this particular site, build it out, set up the plumbing and all that, and now we have to pull out of that because they say it's inadequate for these migrants. Your 215th emergency shelter that you've built is not up to snuff, so you're gonna have to tear it down and do it all over again, is just absurd on its face and really is quite aggravating. But it gets worse because you have all these people within the government teaming up with these nonprofits and legal aid societies, all advocating for this so-called divine right of migrants to live in luxury while they abuse our asylum system.
Briella, before you go, I heard those people who refused to stay at Floyd Bennett now are on their own.
Well, there was actually a person who was working here and coordinating the people getting on and off the buses, Rosanna. He told our reporter who was here yesterday that they were going to the Roosevelt Hotel, which is the intake center. So it's unclear really what the deal is here, if they're going there, if they're going somewhere else, if they're getting on a bus and they're on their own at this point. The city has really not given us too many answers as to what's going on, so not so concrete.
Yeah, you should be on your own if you're refusing the shelters. It's bad enough that you came here entitled to all of the public benefits that should be for the people who fall on harsh times, that actually are citizens of this country, that actually are residents of New York City, legal residents. But for you to look people in the face that provide this for you, spit in their face, and then demand to be taken back to the Roosevelt Hotel, to me, I'm not about that. You need to be put on a plane immediately, sent back to your home country, because if the features and benefits and the living arrangements that you had back there were so much better than what we can offer you here, you need to go back there. You're not a serious asylum seeker. You're a fraudster. You're gumming up the system, and I can only imagine what it must actually be like to be one of the few, the unicorns in this area, that's actually in danger of political persecution, that actually needs these benefits for yourself or for your family, while being surrounded by a bunch of scammers and entitled scammers to boot. It's absolutely insane what we put up with in this country. It's ridiculous and absurd. I said it before and I'll say it again. Remain in Mexico, the best policy of the Trump administration, the best policy in terms of immigration, maybe in the last 50 years in this country, and the Biden administration got rid of it. They wanted these people to flood to the borders, and now they're here, and more importantly, they've inherited the bratty sense of entitlement that the worst Americans have in this country. They already transitioned full into being American, but the absolute worst part and the worst aspects of this country, which is absurd and insane in every possible way. If you're willing to come to this country, you're willing to put in the work, I am certain that a bunch of people from Venezuela would make absolutely fantastic Americans. Let me make that clear, because that's what happens when we import people from socialist countries. They want to be a part of the system. They want to be able to earn. They believe in merit and all that. But this ain't it. These people, that's not what it's about. It's all about welfare. It's all about public benefits. And the proof in the pudding is in the taste. But the problem is none of these people will taste the pudding because it's in a facility that does not have 5-star luxury. And that is not good enough for them. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like. Subscribe for more content. Follow me on my social media. Support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the absolute asinine attitude of these migrants. Till next time.